Hi, and welcome back. I'm here this morning with Destiny Morris, and we're going to talk about grief and mental health in first responder relationships. Hi, Destiny. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Tell me about yourself. What do you do?
Yes. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California. I specialize specifically in working with first responders, first responder relationships, and then I see teenage children of first responders as well. My practice is telehealth. I come from a first responder family myself. My dad worked for the sheriff department. I was in a long term relationship with a firefighter for many years through grad school, which is kind of what piqued my interest. And then ever since I have been practicing as a therapist, I have worked with veterans, first responders, and underneath that umbrella. So trauma is kind of my thing, and EMDR therapy is the main modality that I use.
Okay, let's talk about EMDR for a second because I love EMDR. So let's explain what that is
Yes.
and why we do it and all of that.
Yes, I feel like a lot of people struggle to explain EMDR in a way that makes sense because there's so many neurological components of it. So I try my best to simplify it to what would make sense to everybody because it's very complicated and complex and it sounds very woo woo for a lot of people too, where they're like, what the heck is that? What do you mean we tap? That's weird. So, EMDR is a type of exposure therapy. The letters all stand for something: eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And these are all the different steps of this type of therapy. This is, in my opinion, one of the most gentle and most effective ways to treat trauma because what you're doing is you are essentially rewiring the brain. So, I can't go back and wipe the memory. And if I could, I would be rich. I always say that. But what I can do is I can help take any negative associations that you have with this memory and kind of pull them away from that memory itself so it becomes a more neutral component. And we can also try to instill some more positive associations to it. First responders, sometimes it's specific incidents that they see. And people who have had abuse happen in their life, they'll come and do EMDR. We go back through, desensitize it, and then we rewire your brain. Great for PTSD, great for trauma. I can go in more of what that looks like, but that's kind of like in a nutshell what EMDR does. It's hard. It's not easy. I mean, you're having to sit back through the events of something that were traumatizing to your brain and your body. And I always tell my clients and share with them, I've also done it. I am currently doing it with my own therapist. And I know exactly what it feels like to be in the seat where you're having to go back through, and it's hard. And I always want them to know that so they don't think I'm just sitting here like, haha, like, hope hope you make it through. No, I've been there. I know what it feels like, and I'm here to care for them just as I've been cared for with EMDR. But it is life changing, absolutely.
Okay, so I think that's a wonderful modality. I think it's a great way to segue into grief and how we process grief. We were talking a little bit off air. You were saying you can give soothing techniques and help us walk through that.
Yeah. I would say that one of the worst feelings we can feel as a human is grief and loss. And that's a pretty big umbrella. I mean, there's lots of different categories of grief or things that can bring grief up. There's obviously grief of someone that has passed away. There is the grief of ending a relationship. There is the grief of what you thought was going to be your future, but it ends up being something else. Grief of an animal that you loved that's passed away. Man, disappointment can be tied to grief sometimes too. Grief around what you thought your relationship or your relationship with your children was going to be. A lot of times change brings grief up, but I don't think I've ever experienced an emotion as heavy as grief. I don't know. Have you? Do you know anything heavier?
No, 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 I do not.
Me neither. I feel like it's the worst feeling ever. As a human, it's like our brain thinks we're dying, is what it is. Our brain is getting signals of like, well, you're done. This is it. But the worst part is you're not dying. So you have to push through it. I've shared a little bit about my grieving process and I'm happy to kind of personalize it a bit here too. I went through a really big breakup this year. I shared my relationship publicly on my public Instagram. And I shared a lot of highlights about it. And I think we do that naturally as people who are on social media. Like we want to share the aesthetic. And I try really hard to also share the good, the bad, and ugly, but relationship wise, I was sharing a lot of the highlights. And so I shared after about a month of into grieving that I had ended this relationship, and the support for the community was really awesome. But the thing I loved the most was how many women had reached out to me and men saying that they were also going through grief. They were also going through a breakup. They had lost a loved one. And I was and currently still sharing a lot of practical tips of how to self soothe and get through the grieving process because it can feel really lonely. It can feel very heavy and it can feel very isolating when you are in the thick of it,
Well, and even if you're grieving with a partner, right? Like,
right?
we talked
Still
about
feels it.
when something happens with your children or when something that you thought was going to be ends up being a different something, you know? So even when you have someone that you're grieving with, it still feels like you're the only one grieving, and it's so
Yeah.
heavy.
It is. I also want to mention one more component of grief I see a lot in my practice is when we think of grief, we usually think of someone dying or something ending. But a lot of first responders and sometimes their partners too hold grief for the people that they've responded to. I see this a lot where they don't realize that they hold it. I have this picture of a bucket, and you probably heard the analogy of like when each drop adds up, right? So
Mhm,
I think of them sometimes as tears, like they're holding everybody's stuff. Just like for me, I'm holding everybody's stuff in my work life. If I don't know how to dump my bucket, then eventually that bucket's going to get way too full and I'm not going to be able to carry it anymore. And a lot of first responders struggle with that too, where they're like, I'm crying all the time, or I'm very emotional and I'm not sure where it's coming from. And I have to say, man, let's look at your bucket. You ever dumped that thing? And they're like, no, I've been first responder for 25 years. I've never dumped my bucket. And I'm like, well, there you go. It's spilling over. We have to dump the bucket. And it can be scary. I know for men sometimes too, because there is that cultural component of men don't show emotions, but
mhm.
that is also a part of grieving. I just want to circle that in there for listeners as well.
Right. So you were talking about and I interrupted you. You're talking about how it feels so isolating, so let's go from there.
Yes. So you can still feel very alone because everybody grieves differently. Right, so even if you're grieving alongside your partner of something or your children or your dog, whatever, right? Whatever you're grieving together, a lot of times, 99.9% of the time, you're grieving different because 'cause you're 2 different people. So, one person might need to be alone in their grief and they shut down and they get quiet. And maybe the other person wants to talk through it and have a lot of emotions and, like, get it out of their system. So, everybody grieves differently. And that is one of the components of when you're grieving with someone. It can feel isolating because you're not doing it exactly the same, so it doesn't feel like you're doing it together. But in reality, you are. You're just doing it differently.
Right.
Mhm.
And the stages of grief are not linear, as we know. So one of you
Oh,
might be in one part of grief and the other one might be in another. And also, you might be going in and out of those same stages as well. So,
yeah. I've shared this a lot. I'm laughing because I shared this a lot on my Instagram story too. Is no, it's not linear, and you will feel crazy. I mean, at least I have in some moments where I'm like, wow. Yesterday, I was like, this is great. I feel wonderful. I'm doing all this growing. I have so much hope. And then literally the next day, I'm like, I had such bad insomnia because I don't like, sleeping alone. And that's a new thing for me. Gosh, it's so up and down and up and down. But what's important, and I was just telling a couple clients this yesterday, is that our growth is not linear either. I think a lot of times we have this expectation that in order to get better, to heal, to push through the grief, that we need to be like going on an upward trend. And that's not realistic to life. It's normal for us to have like divots and moments of weakness. And for some people, relapse. There's a lot of different components of growth, and we will get to the end at some point and we'll be in a different season. But for now, it's important to kind of have grace for yourself and allow yourself to kind of roll through the moments as they come.
yes, tell me some things that you suggest to your clients or that you've done yourself that helped you through grief.
Yes. Okay. So I do sprinkle a lot of somatic work, which basically means including the body. I firmly believe that our nervous system is connected to our physical body as well. It's not just our mind. Our mind and our body are connected. We've kind of decided that in these newer years of research and studies that, hey, they might actually be connected. They're not two separate things. Um, And I firmly believe that. So in my practice, I use a lot of somatic, which is like touch or self soothing exercises. And I would love to share that too. A lot of them are more around sleep. For some reason, I don't know if you've experienced this, Chelsea, but at least in my my grief, nighttime has always felt the hardest. It, like, puts everything under a magnifying glass, I feel like, and it makes it feel 10,000,000 times heavier, and I've even had some nights where I'm telling myself, like, "The sun will come out in the morning. Make it through, sister, because the sun is coming out in the morning."
And you still have things you gotta do tomorrow. Yes, I think it's the same thing with illness, right? It's when we get a cold, it's so much worse at night. There's just something about that. I don't it's like that nighttime phenomenon.
Yeah, the nighttime scaries. I mean, I think that's a very real thing for a lot of people, especially with the time change that just happened. I felt it. I was like, "Ooh, it's dark and I'm alone. Love that." Not really, but
Time change is actually kicking my butt this year. Like, I
Ugh.
usually have a alarm set. I get up at 6:30 routinely every morning, and I've been waking up at, like, 4:30.
Oof.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not fun.
that's really early. Do you go to bed earlier though?
I do. I don't necessarily go to sleep at 8, but I get into bed at 8, and then I'm asleep usually by at least 10 or 11.
I like that though. I feel like that's a nice stretch of time for you just to decompress,
Yeah.
where you're like, "Oh, okay."
I'm chasing the kids around, doing all the things with them and doing dinner and everything while Cameron's gone is exhausting. So
You're all being
I fought it for a really long time. I'm gonna try to stay up with the kids and I'm gonna do all this stuff, but I realized what it was doing was just making me tired and grumpy all the time. And so no, I'm
Yes.
gonna go to bed at 7. I'm gonna watch my chick flick without my husband here, and then I'm gonna go to sleep. And it's been fantastic until the time change.
Yes. Yeah, and we'll adjust again and it
We
will
will.
be
Yeah.
sunshine again. Yeah. Sometimes one of the components is self-talk, how you talk to yourself, right? So, I like to think about everybody has an inner child. Inner child work is coming up a lot in my own work and a lot of my clients' work. We all have this little version of us. Everybody does. And it's usually anywhere between like 5 and 9 or 10. And I have a lot of clients try to visualize like, what's your inner child? What age are they? Right. Mine, she's very temperamental. She does not like to be alone. She does not like the dark. And I've had to kind of map out for myself personally, like what soothes her. So when we think about self soothing, a lot of the things that soothed us as a child are also going to soothe us as an adult. And this is where I know some people are like, oh, that's so cringy. But there are a lot of soothing practices that obviously I wouldn't do them in public, but in the comfort of my own bedroom or my own house, I do them. And I'll get into some of those too. So, one of them is how we talk to that inner child, right? I don't have children, but you do. And I know how I would talk to a child. But if a child came up to you between the ages of 5 and 8 and they said, Chelsea, I am having a really hard time tonight. I feel like I can't sleep. I'm scared that I'm not going to be able to fall asleep. I just feel really sad and alone. Would you yell at her and be like, "What is wrong with you? Lay down."
No.
Yeah, how would you talk to her? What would you say to her?
I would say, "Let me sit with you for a little while. Let's read an extra bedtime story. Let's think about the fun things we're gonna do tomorrow. What were some fun things that happened today?" I try to take their mind off of the scaries of nighttime. I mean, for my kids, I would read 10 books before they'd finally feel like they could go to sleep.
Mhm.
So, we try to make it bedtime a good experience and a good routine.
I love that. You're a great mom. Yes. So that's how we should speak to ourselves. But 90% of the time, we're not. We are our own worst critic. We're the most unkind to ourselves. And I've heard people say, oh, talk to yourself like you talk to a friend. And that's good. But I like to take it one layer deeper. Talk to
Mhm.
yourself like you would talk to your child. Or if you don't have children, how you would talk to any child in general, right? You would look at them with kindness and say, hey, it's okay if you don't fall asleep right away. Resting is still resting if our eyes are closed. Or guess what? The sun comes out in the morning. Tomorrow's a new day. Today feels heavy. That's all right. But we tend to not do that. In our own minds, we're like, what is wrong with me? Why am I still grieving? Gosh, yesterday I felt good. Today I can't sleep. I'm just really, gosh, I should be much further in my grief journey, or this is awful. Or we tell ourselves things like, I know my mind likes to say, you're going to be alone forever. You're never going to find anybody, or, you know, like
It's
super
so
mean
not true.
things. Thank you. But they're mean, right? Like, you would never tell your child that, like, "You're gonna
No,
be alone forever. I hope you enjoy your scaries."
like,
Like,
no.
so that is such a simple thing, but it's actually one of the most powerful parts. So before we get into the somatic part, we have to talk about how we talk to ourselves in our head. So I would encourage anybody who's going through grief or having a hard time or having anxiety when their first responder is not home or feeling like their nervous system doesn't settle when they're alone. A lot of first responder spouses have that anxiety to kind of acknowledge that little child inside of them that goes, "Ooh, I don't like to be alone," or "I it feels like abandonment when they're gone," or "I feel like I don't sleep very well," or "I'm worried about their safety," or, "My kids' safety." I know that's also a component of first responder lives too. So being able to acknowledge that little girl inside me, she doesn't like it. And how do I talk to her and give her permission and kind of have space for her? Because if we try to shut her down and just tell her, like, nope, shut up, lay down, it's going to make it 10 times worse every single time. Anytime we're avoiding something, it makes it way worse. But if we look at it head on and address it, then it's not as scary to our nervous system. So that would be step one. Step two would be the more somatic stuff that you can do. So, one of my favorite ways to regulate is cold exposure therapy. You've heard me be a freak about this on my Instagram. So, no surprise to anybody who knows who I am. I'm always like, get in the cold plunge, put your face in the cold water. Even at nighttime, it can be really helpful to regulate. I would say this is like your break glass in case of emergency. So this is you're spiraling, you are starting to get an adrenaline response from the anxiety, or the grief is just so heavy and you can't stop crying. You can't get out of it. So crying actually resets our nervous system. It's a good thing. But putting your face inside a bowl of ice water or putting your face in a cold plunge is also regulating. You will get a sense of calm after, very similar to the sense of calm you get after you finish crying. So that's a big one. Have you done
Yeah,
that
so
before?
every time you jump in a cold river, think about how you feel right after your nervous system regulates to the shock of the cold water.
Yeah, what's funny as a woman too, I don't know if this is universal or just me, but I know that I can feel like self-conscious or uncomfortable or feel like I need to sit a certain way. But as soon as I swim in the ocean, I don't care what the heck I look like. I could have seaweed coming off my face and I feel the most content whole version of myself. And I think it has to do with that nervous system regulation as
Mhm.
well. I can be coming out of the ocean and not even care what I look like and just feel really comfortable. Do you know that feeling?
I do. So I don't go in the ocean, but I was just recently in Cool Springs, and for whatever reason, the resort that we were at, the pools were so cold. It was like jumping in the ocean, and that's a very familiar feeling where I just don't care now. Things are good. I feel
Yeah.
fantastic. But I think
Yeah.
too with the ocean, and this is like gonna get into that woo-wee stuff that nobody wants to talk about, but I
I
feel
like
like
it.
the kinetic energy that happens in the ocean is very soothing too. And my kids have experienced it. They surf. I think you surf
Oh,
too.
yes.
Surfing
Yeah.
is good. And it's something about helping the mind connect to the body too. For whatever reason, that up and down feeling of the water is I can't do it. I have a huge fear of the ocean. I had a drowning experience when I was little. I just won't go
I
in the ocean.
mean, you could do some EMDR around that. We'll
I
we'll fix
probably
you right up.
should, but there's something too about
Yeah.
that, just sitting and watching the
Yes,
waves.
absolutely. Yeah, being outside, all of that, very healing.
Yeah.
So cold exposure can be really helpful. I think that's probably what I use when I've used a bunch of other things first. For myself personally, some people like to do that first. A couple other things you can do is tapping. So we do tapping with EMDR. And I do it over telehealth, so that's why I have people tap. But when you're in person, they hand you buzzers and they just vibrate back and forth. And it uses the left and the right side of your brain at the same time. It's called bilateral stimulation. It also soothes the nervous system. So think about again a child when you're trying to soothe a baby or a little kid that's crying. You usually pat them on the back or you rock them back and forth. So our nervous systems are used to that as a child. And then as an adult, we don't do that to soothe anymore. So again, these can feel crazy. I wouldn't do these in public, but I do them in my bed before bed to help calm your nervous system if you're in a cycle of grief or anxiety is just tapping back and forth on your shoulders and just doing this for a minute or two. And what you can do is you can do a breathing exercise while you're tapping. Essentially, you want to be exhaling for longer than you're inhaling. So you can inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. And you can do any numbers that feel comfortable for you. As we get more relaxed, our breathing becomes longer. As we're more stressed out, our breathing is capacity is a lot shorter. That's why people, when they're panicking, right, they have that kind of quick breathing that happens, or hyperventilation, is because their nervous system is like so dysregulated. So when we regulate, we'll notice that we can inhale for 7 and exhale for 9. So that can be really helpful as the tapping that does calm the nervous system. We have something called a vagus nerve. It's a very popular term on the internet right now and TikTok. It's basically a nerve that runs all the way through our body, and it is responsible for soothing the nervous system or our nerves in general. So humming, mouth closed humming, like a deep hum, is something that activates the vagus nerve. And I like to shower or take a bath before bed. I don't get my hair wet or anything, but just the warm water, what it does is it creates serotonin in your brain, and that's what helps you relax and get sleepy. So for people that are using a lot of supplements or melatonin before bed, that can be very habit forming. And also with melatonin, you need more each time in order to continue to get calm, because it's a natural thing. And then if we're supplementing it, then we're not using our natural ability. So we want to do things like warm water before bed, a shower or bath, to help give us more serotonin. But when you're in the shower or the bath, you could do some of this humming. Again, can feel weird to maybe other people in the family, but you could let them know, hey, it's what I'm doing to just regulate myself, or you close the door and turn the fan on and no one can hear you. It's just kind of like a like a deep hum, and that activates vagus nerve as well. So those are a few that I would start with. Some other things are allowing pockets of time to cry. Did you ever see the show Shrinking on Apple TV?
Mm-mm, I did not.
Oh, okay. So there's a show on Apple TV called Shrinking, and it's about therapists. So of course I love it.
Of
But it's
course.
about like the crappiest therapists ever. And they basically just say what they're thinking. So it's very therapeutic for me to watch because I'm like, that's funny. Like I've felt that before. In the show, one of the daughters, she loses her mom. Her mom passes away and she's grieving. And her therapist tells her, set aside an hour or a half an hour a day where you close a door, you put on sad music, and you designate that space to grieving. And I love that so much, because what happens is if we are distracted all day long, which typically in our society we are, I am too. I mean, I'm the worst. I'll make breakfast. I try to read my Bible while I'm eating breakfast, but I'll make breakfast, I'll listen to music, and then I'll read my Bible for a little bit. But then I always take my phone and I'm scrolling reels or TikToks or whatever. And then I see my clients and I'm talking with them. And then in between, I'm listening to music again. So I'm stimulated by something all day long. And then I'm on my phone in between things and sometimes while I'm driving. And by the time my head hits my pillow, if I have not created any space for my grief, guess what's going to happen? My grief is going to say, hey, you ignored me all day long, sister. It's going to come up, and it's going to come up loud. So if you feel like night times are the worst for your grief, I mean, that's very normal, but it could also be that you're not creating any space for it in your day. And grief is disruptive. And sometimes it doesn't wait for us to create space. It's like an ocean, like a wave in the ocean, right? You turn your back and all of a sudden you're knocked down and you're like, shoot, where did that come from? You could be in a grocery store and it's random, and all of a sudden you think about someone that you lost and it's sad. I also want to talk about the holidays, actually, because I think this ties in. The holidays can be one of the hardest times for grief. I make a joke with my clients, like, make sure you book ahead because everybody's sad and having a hard time right now. So I'm booked and busy for these next 2 months usually. And it's accurate. It's a joke, but it's real and it's hard. So when grief pops up around the holidays, it can feel the heaviest because our culture and society and TV shows and movies have told us that Christmas and Thanksgiving are supposed to be happy and warm and everybody gets along and we all play board games and eat pie and giggle and laugh and go around and talk about how thankful we are for everybody and wear matching jammies, right? Like this is the picture we've grown up with. And then
Mhm.
even talking about it, it gives me warm and fuzzies. I'm like, yeah, that sounds so nice. But is that realistic? No.
Not at all.
No, there will be like 5 fights that happen most likely. I will be grieving at some point. I will miss somebody probably that's not there, people who have passed that were part of our family that are not anymore, different dynamics and relationship challenges. And what's interesting too is if your whole family comes together, think about it, and throughout the year, you're kind of dealing with these one at a time dynamics,
Mhm.
but now you've got everybody's dynamic in one room and you're dealing with it usually for one very long day. So, if you feel grief bubble up during the holiday season, you are not alone. It is very common. And I want everybody to know that it is more common to have a dysregulated, dysfunctional family than it is to have this perfect matching, cozy, jammy family. And we will have seasons of that or even moments of that. But I doubt that anybody's like entire dynamic is going to be perfect from start to finish through the holidays. It's just not realistic. So again, remember that child who's like, I'm feeling a little nervous about going to this event. What would you tell a kid? Suck it up. You're fine. Maybe some people, but when we're gentle to our children, we just say, hey, I'm right here with you. If we need to take a break and go outside, if we need to leave early because we're overwhelmed, why don't we pack something that makes you feel comfortable? Let's pack your favorite snack. Let's bring your favorite drink. Let's set some boundaries. All of that is how we would talk to a child. We need to talk to ourselves and address ourselves with that as well.
Yes, I love all of that.
Yeah.
I wanna circle back to when you were talking about first responders and the bucket. We wanted to talk a little bit about female first responders and how they regulate and the masculine and female energy. So let's dive in.
Yes, yes, I love that. Let me talk about this first. I do have a course that I created. The first course I created, well, I started with a cycle syncing course, so I have that one, but that's not very popular, it just kinda sits there. The other course that I created that was bigger was specifically for the spouses of the first responder, and that was more fire related. So, it went through all of the different, like, elements of relationship as a first responder partner, and then it talks about how to support the first responder through, like, PTSD and what do you do and how do you communicate, what happens when your sex drives are mismatched, and all of these things. So that was a big one. Then I thought we need a course specifically for the first responders who are females because I don't feel like there is enough space just for the female first responders. I think they get shoved underneath this umbrella of all first responders. The biggest thing that I see in my practice with female first responders who come to therapy is they get stuck in this very hypervigilant space. And it's different than men who get stuck in hypervigilance. There are some crossovers, obviously, with being a first responder in general, like, staying in that very on and aware of everything around you. That's part of being a first responder. But females get stuck in a different way where all day long they're in what I call, I don't know how to call it less woo woo but your masculine energy or your masculine space. You have to be in order to be respected, in order to do your job properly, you are in this masculine space. It is a male dominated space, even though nowadays we have many, many female first responders. I've heard of some departments that are mostly female, which I love that so much. But traditionally, firefighting, wildland, it's a male dominated space and it uses a lot of that masculine energy. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's very powerful, makes you good at what you do. The issue that I'm seeing is that women get stuck in this space when they come home, when they're off the job, when they retire, and they are not able to tap into a softer, more feminine side of themselves. And I'm not talking about like you should be girly when you're off and manly when you're working. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the nervous system. I'm talking about the ability to let your guard down. I'm talking about in relationships, being able to allow a man to lead you if that's the dynamic you're looking for, or to trust somebody. A lot of female first responders really, really struggle with allowing themselves to be a little bit softer in relationships. And sometimes there's this power struggle, especially when it's first responder relationships where you have two
Mhm.
people that are first responders. There's almost like this power dynamic that's it's really difficult because a lot of times the female is not able to regulate herself and do things slower and be kind and gentle because she's used to working in this masculine space. And it can create a lot of things like it can create some PTSD symptoms if you're never, unwinding and coming down from that. And it can create a lot of stress as well if you're never taking your first responder hat off. You're always wearing it no matter what. It can definitely create the inability to sit in silence, the inability to sit still, A lot of these female first responders are so go, 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 go all the time. So that can create burnout. It can create lack of empathy or a lot of apathy. These are a lot of signs and symptoms that I see of people who come to therapy and they're like, what's wrong with me? This job has changed me. And I'm like, well, yes, it has changed you because your brain has been wired to stay in that masculine space, but no one's taught you how to come down from that. And so we call it decompressing, but for females, it should be a lot different than it is for males.
Okay, so how do you dump the bucket?
Good question. Okay. There's a few ways. Obviously, I'm biased. I believe that therapy is extremely helpful and that a lot of people could benefit from it. But I'm also realistic to know that not everybody's open to it. Not everybody believes in it. And that's not everybody's jam, which is fine. So, my first thing is therapy would be what I would recommend because a lot of times we don't know how to dump the bucket ourselves. So, let me back up for a second. Dumping the bucket yourself, and I can use myself as an example here because I hold a bucket for my job too. That looks like a lot of separation and boundary between work and home life. So I work in my home, which makes it a little bit more challenging to do that. But it's for me, it's closing my laptop, turning off my work phone. 2 years ago, decided to separate my personal and work phone number, and that was the best decision I ever did. And at the end of my workday, I do put my phone on do not disturb, and then also self care, right? So for me, that's exercising, it's cold plunging, it's getting in my sauna, it's petting my dog, it's going for walks. Those are the things that help me decompress. And I have a routine that I do when I get off work to help me shut work down. So that's one way to put the bucket aside and not carry it all the time. And then to actually dump it would be to look at the contents in it and hold them. And that sucks because as humans, we don't want to do that. We want to go, whoop, it's in the bucket. I don't have to see it. I don't want to feel it. But that bucket's going to get full and it's going to get heavy. So in therapy, what we do is we kind of like scoop our hands in the bucket and we go, oh, interesting. Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. Wow, that was an interesting call, or that was an interesting thing. I do that for myself in my own therapy, where I go to my therapist and I'm like, oh, there's some stuff in my bucket. I wasn't able to dump it myself. You know, the self care and separation is great, but she'll sit with me and we'll kind of just talk through it and air it out. And that dumps the bucket. For those that don't believe in therapy or want to do therapy, you can also do this with coworkers. So if you're a first responder, you can decompress with your coworker if you have that relationship and just be like, whoa, that was an early call. What'd you think? Oh, that's how I felt. Like, wow. And if it comes up again, you talk about it again. But I also know that not everybody has that dynamic at their department. So it just depends on that culture and if that's feels appropriate and you trust your coworkers. And obviously the deeper work when we talk about actually reprocessing stuff that is not just a light like, oh, it's in the bucket, let's dump it, but the things that are like that's in the bucket and it's weighing the bucket down and we can't get rid of it. That would be something that needs like EMDR therapy or a modality that actually gets into the depths of it and rewires your brain around it.
One of my things is I love, like, just writing it down
That's good too. Journaling is great. Yeah, absolutely.
just to get it out of me and
Mhm.
onto something else, you know?
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We're just getting it out. We're flushing it out. It sounds silly, but going back to somatic, I bought a mini trampoline this year. A rebounder, if you will, is what we call it. And my first responders love to make fun of me for this. I can't even tell you how many times they're in my DMs sending me those ridiculous reels of the ladies who are doing like, you've seen the reels that it's like, women will do anything to call it exercise. And there's some that are so ridiculous. I agree. But rebounding obviously has a lot of benefits for like lymphatic drainage and all that. But it also is very similar to like your dog. Have you ever seen your dog get into like an altercation with maybe another dog? They just kind of have words. Do you know what your dog does right after that?
no, I don't think I've ever noticed.
Well, neglect is happening at Chelsea's house. I'm totally teasing. Yes, most people don't. So, and the reason I do is because I look at somatic things, but most dogs shake. They're not
Mm.
wet, right? There's no reason why they would shake off, except they're shaking off the energy, right? They're like, ooh, let's get that off.
Okay, maybe I have noticed that, but it didn't,
Yeah.
like, register in my
Yes.
brain.
Oh, I'm sure you've seen it. You'll see sometimes dogs just do it too. Like when they've been laying down for a long time, they'll just shake, right? Like
Mhm.
just shake it off. And again, they're not wet. So why are they shaking? It's because they're just kind of like just shaking it off, right? So that's a thing that helps our nervous system. So for me, in between sessions, I'll either, if it was a heavy session, I'll jump on my trampoline for a little bit and just kind of shake it off. Or again, I know I could look like a crazy person to my neighbors who can see into my office, but whatever. I will physically just like heebie jeebie shake it off, like move my arms, move my legs, bounce around a little bit. There are studies that show that when we do that after a call, after sitting with a heavy client, after doing something that's uncomfortable, anything in your life, you don't have to be in the caring for people business. Anything that's hard, challenging, just like dogs do, we're actually kind of just like refreshing our nervous system and shaking it off. We're not holding on to it anymore. That is a really helpful practice to use as well when we talk about like somatic stuff we can do for our nervous system.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so how are we gonna wrap it up?
I want to wrap it up by normalizing
Yeah.
for anybody that needs to hear this. If you are grieving right now, if you are stuck in a downward space of mental health, so anxiety, depression, OCD, and anything, right? Number one, you're not alone. Number two, you are not crazy for it feeling more intense during the holidays or when it's dark outside. I want to normalize that this is very common. I'm in it to some degree myself, and this is just a season. This is not forever. There are things that will help you move through this. And I want everyone to know that picking one of those things and just doing one of them, you don't have to have this elaborate self care plan, but you can just pick one or two of those and start to practice them. And if you are doing these things on your own and you're not in therapy, I highly recommend finding someone that you trust that can help keep you accountable and guide you through this. Because a lot of times we need someone to say, hey, it's okay. Like, don't give up. We're almost there. Guess what? The light's at the end of the tunnel. You almost made it through. I want everyone listening to know that I'm always a resource as far as pointing someone to therapy, or I have space in my practice. I'm telehealth. There's a lot of resources that I know I have and Chelsea has as well. So you can DM me, you can email me, you can text me. All of that information is available on my Instagram page as well.
Okay, so where do people find you?
My Instagram is on_being_resilient. And I have a website, DestinyMorrisTherapy.com. My website is where you'll find links to everything. My phone number is on there, my email address, my Instagram, and my first responder course is on there too. Anybody who's listening to this and is interested in the first responder significant other course, if you send me a DM and tell me that you found me from this podcast, I will give you a discount link and you'll be able to apply that as well. Okay.
Oh, I love that, and also, I highly recommended that course. It's fantastic. Highly
Thank
recommend.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
we'll have that information in the show notes too. So, thank you so much, Destiny. This is fantastic. I think it's gonna be so helpful. It really made me feel like my 2025 was pretty normal in the grief aspect of things. So, thank you, and thank you
Good.
for being so I think on your Instagram, this just the last, like, 6 months, the transparency has actually been really awesome, and I'm incredibly proud of you for putting that out there. It's tough to be transparent like that online, and you did it, and it was refreshing to see someone being so real in a very curated space, you know what I mean? So, not that I appreciate that you had to go through it, but I do appreciate how you shared it with us. I think it's solid gold.
Thank you so much. It felt really healing to be able to have a space to kind of talk it out and share it. And then also for clients to bring it up in session and be like, you brought this up, or I realized that this is something you talked about. That's something that's come up for me, but I haven't known how to share it with you. So it's been a really cool practice weaving it into, disclosure with my clients and allowing them to see me as a human as well. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you so much.